Tell me if you heard this one before. Another local official facing corruption charges. This time, the mayor of Mount Vernon, Westchester County. We're going to take a look at the case, plus that city's troubled history. Plus, speaking of corruption, the jury in the Percoco trial finishes another day without a verdict. We're going to take a look at why it's taking so long and why it's becoming so difficult to convict public officials. Then, a special election in Pennsylvania tomorrow. It is getting special attention from the White House, as well as the whole country. We're going to explain what the fuss is all about. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you for joining us this Monday. Well, we begin in Mount Vernon. That is where the mayor has been arrested and charged with corruption. Now, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, he announced the charges in Manhattan today, and Fox 1's Ray Ramundi, he was there. He joins us now. Ray?
And what's even more shocking about the serious charges against Mayor Thomas, Attorney General Eric Schneiderman says that the alleged scheming started even before Mayor Thomas took office here in Mount Vernon. And when he did get into office, the alleged scheming and stealing became progressively worse. Right now, our first look at Mayor Richard Thomas booking photos after he turned himself in on Monday morning. The mugshots come after the state attorney general reveals salacious details of how the mayor allegedly used his campaign and personal accounts as his personal piggy bank, lied, and failed to disclose the spending on financial disclosure accounts with the city of Mount Vernon.
Today, I'm announcing criminal charges against Mount Vernon Mayor Richard Thomas for a series of unscrupulous and illegal violations of the public trust.
The Attorney General laying out an orchestrated scheme by the mayor which spanned close to 3 years. Prosecutors allege Thomas stole close to $13,000 from a campaign committee account and more than $45,000 from an inaugural committee account he created after he became mayor.
We allege that Thomas, who ran on a platform of cleaning up corruption in Mount Vernon, was in fact taking money directly from his campaign account to pay for personal expenses.
Prosecutors say Thomas was deliberate and calculated with spending from what Schneiderman calls a personal slush fund, spending which included $8,900 on personal reimbursements, meals during a family vacation to Mexico, and using thousands of dollars to pay off his own personal American Express credit card. The Attorney General adds Thomas also spent funds on a $2,000 Chanel purse, rent payments, and even payments for a car note and auto insurance.
Public corruption strikes at the heart of our democracy. Corruption like Mayor Thomas's erodes the public trust and makes New Yorkers more cynical about their public servants.
Thomas now adamantly denying the charges against him. Mayor Thomas is now facing 5 criminal charges, including grand larceny. If he's convicted on all charges, he faces anywhere between 2 to 6 years in prison. He pleaded not guilty during an arraignment hearing this morning. He's due back in court on May 1st, Richard.
Ray, thank you very much. Now, the arraignment of Mayor Thomas, both surprising and unsurprising to those who follow Mount Vernon politics. And to help put this morning's events in perspective, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman.
And Rich, the surprising part of today's case against Richard Thomas is that he campaigned to change the culture of Mount Vernon politics, a culture that's been littered with both legal entanglements and political infighting. Then again, these charges are hardly the first controversy or even questionable decision that followed Mayor Thomas into office.
The allegations are not true, and I want to reassure the people of Mount Vernon that this has nothing to do with my service in office.
That was Mount Vernon Mayor Democrat Richard Thomas denying he improperly took money from his campaign accounts and inaugural committee and used it for his personal benefit. This moments after he was arraigned for doing exactly that Monday morning.
I have no doubt that we will be able to prove our full compliance with the letter, ethics, and spirit of the law.
Though one of Thomas's attorneys, Carl Bernstein, seemed less certain, telling the Journal News that Thomas, quote, never intended in any way to violate the law. It doesn't mean mistakes are not sometimes made.
The way Mount Vernon functioned and operated, it's changing.
Thomas was elected in 2015 in part to change the culture of Mount Vernon politics, defeating 4-term Mayor Ernie Davis and 3 others in the 2015 Democratic primary. Davis was sentenced to probation after admitting he failed to pay some property taxes and not filing a tax return in 2011. But bringing change to Mount Vernon politics is easier said than done. Many of Thomas's opponents and critics are fellow Democrats, some of whom he ran against and defeated. battles that extended after Thomas took over as mayor, leading to accusations of dysfunction and favoritism in both directions. Add to that the morass that Mount Vernon's Memorial Field has become. Plans to renovate the long-decaying city landmark had been announced just weeks before the mayor's arraignment, and Thomas had his own personal baggage follow him into office as well. Thomas's half-brother resigned his position in the city's fire department and its union after he was hit with federal gun charges. He was later sentenced to probation and is now suing the city. Plus, questions followed Thomas after his appointee for public safety commissioner was ousted after just 3 months on the job. Two quick notes. One, Thomas is not accused of misusing taxpayer money or money from city coffers, just from his election and inauguration campaigns. And two, if Thomas is found guilty of the felony, which is one of the 5 counts he's facing, he would automatically be removed from office. Rich?
All right, Andrew. And joining us now is Jeannie Zanna, professor of political science at Iona College and also a senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. And listen, this is a sad story, but you know what? It's becoming so familiar. Frankly, I don't know anymore that being shocked is really a viable reaction to any of this. And for anybody, I'm sorry to say, oh, well, I didn't know, I didn't think. It's church and state. Campaign funds and office funds are two completely different things. You're not paying for your dinner meal in Mexico with the family here with your basically your campaign funds, and anybody thinks that's copacetic or paying off your bills. So my level of sympathy here is negligible. We'll see how the case plays out. But, you know, this isn't just about Mount Vernon politics, Jeannie. This is such a almost predictable thing after a while. And I sound like Dominic, you know, saying that, and I don't believe that they're all
Don't say
doing
that,
it.
Richard.
I don't. But you know what? Next segment, we're going to go to Lower Manhattan covering, you know, the Prococo trial. And there has to be a bright line, and I'm giving no benefit of the doubt for people who are traveling in that gray area. There is no gray area with this stuff.
And this is where I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a sad story about Mount Vernon. It's a sad story about this young mayor who showed so much promise when he was elected. I mean, we all remember when he came into office as this fresh new voice, ready to tackle Mount Vernon's serious challenges, and has been so far really unable to do that, and now is going to be more crippled in that effort as he faces these charges. But it's not just about that. It's about the culture in New York State. And the
And by the way,
Prococo
it's not
trial,
just New York.
and it's not just
we've
New
covered
York.
New Jersey and everything else.
And
It's just,
Illinois. I mean, you can go up and down.
Yep.
But it's you know, and it stems in large part from the Supreme Court's most recent rulings in terms of corruption. And we have to get some answers. And one thing I would ask is, you know, where is Albany on this? You have Eric Schneiderman going out and looking for corruption as it concerns election campaign funds, as he should. And yet we have had a governor who's running again in November who has said he's going to tackle some of the really problematic aspects of New York State elections. Hasn't really been done yet. And facing his own trial with his own you know, insider, and you also have a Senate and an Assembly that have done very little on these issues.
But you mentioned the gray area in some of these other cases, and it seems like there's even less gray area in the Thomas case, because there's no official act that's being. I mean, there are some allegations in the charging documents that may flesh out, but this was not a quid pro quo. This was not he did something or is accused of doing something in exchange for an official act or for taking action on somebody's behalf. This is simply him dipping into the money if the accusations are to be believed. The other thing that strikes me as odd is he would have to know that this is going to be accounted for. So the bar to prove it, I think, would be even lower
We don't know
than
this.
it would be in all those other cases.
I think the other part is who tipped off Schneiderman, okay? It's no secret, Andrew said in his report here, the mayor certainly didn't make a lot of friends when he came in. I mean, to me, that's the original sin before even what he did was, what was the whole premise of the campaign? I'm the guy to clean up Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who's gonna, you know, basically, you know, empty out all the old dishwater here and start fresh here and be the anti-corruption candidate and all the rest. And to be this tone deaf and ham-handed, if the allegations are true, to do this, that's even more shameful than some of the predecessors who also have gotten their share of trouble because they didn't have the pretense that they were the white
I mean,
knight.
the one thing, I agree with you. It's not that gray area we talk about with some of these other people. But let's be clear. He didn't take from Mount Vernon taxpayers' money. And it's always been an issue. When you are the candidate and you've raised this money and he's planning to run again, why can't he use and replenish?
I know you know the answer to me.
But
why don't they do the following? And first of all, if I'm an elected official, I do this, but even if I have temptations, mandate from now on, like I said, church and state. There's campaign funds, and then there's office funds that you're allocated as any elected official, depending on the position. If you want to touch $1 of the campaign funds, you should go to an independent arbiter and say, listen, here's how I want to apply the funds for X or Y or Z. And they say yes or no. But then you don't have this gray area. But he created phony accounts, if you believe the allegations, all the rest. So it's not like he unknowingly was some babe in the woods, right? Buying Chanel bags and picking up the tabs in Mexico and all the rest. Please, it's not like,
absolutely. Those turn out to be true. But let's talk about the other aspect of this, is we don't pay these people enough. And you have a guy who owes money in terms of his degree that he pursued. You cannot get good people unless you pay them.
But I am shocked over 20-something years what I've learned, which I can't believe this, but I will tell you it's a fact, and this is not just the city of Mount Vernon, I'm talking about statewide elected officials and the rest. People with modest net worth who run for office, and we want these people to be representative of the regular person, not just the rich guy. When they get there, for whatever reason, they're shocked that really the money they have is their base number. They're not getting, in effect, their per diems that they can do all these things. Now, all of a sudden, they go and they see the other people, including donors, living really well. They want the same things. Look what happened to Governor Rowland in Connecticut. The flippin' shed, right, that he built in the back of his house. Because, if you believe the stories, the wife goes, well, hey, look at all these friends we have over at our great mansion here that they give us. But we can't afford to even put a shed in the back of our house. Well, that's how you go reach. That's where you get the middle of the envelopes from. That's where you dip in the wrong funds. Again, you should know this when you take the job, what the deal is. That's why, even though I'm a soft touch on other things, not on this stuff. They know better. They should know better, or you shouldn't take the job. It's called due diligence, and these guys aren't doing it before they do it, and they can't make the ends justify the means. They don't have the math.
No, they don't, and they also have the proximity to a lot of money. And, you know, the inaugural commission that Thomas formed, and that he apparently dipped into.
What are you talking? 12 grand or something?
I think Ray's piece said it was a little more than 40 or 50.
Okay.
So there's a little bit.
Fair enough.
We're not
talking
about
$500,000.
No, we're not.
It's always.
But it's like, you're the incoming mayor of Mount Vernon. Do you need to raise $150,000 for an inaugural campaign? We have the same question, by the way, going on with the Trump inauguration in 2017. Why do you need to raise all this outside money? And as soon as you put an elected official or a candidate in that proximity to that kind of limitless money, that's where you get into the temptation. Yes, they should be better than it and be able to stay away from it. But again, that's part of the problem that I have with just all the money in politics overall.
You don't get the money right away. You're not going to get the money.
And thank you for saying that, because this is the root of the problem. That's why I'm talking about Albany. If you tell people to get and keep your job, you need to hobnob with the wealthy and raise all this money. What do you expect is going to happen? More often than not, it happens even to good people.
In the real world, Jeannie, even though I and he might think the idea of publicly financing campaigns, they're not going to happen in my lifetime. They're not going to do it.
It may not, but maybe it should, or we should think of another way.
I think it should.
Yeah.
I also think, by the way, here's what I do. I said this on the show on Friday. Make them it's a full-time job, pay them more money. That way they don't have a side hustle here, and if they don't have a side hustle, they're not an attorney for one day, and all you're doing is you're going to the guy for access, okay? Make it a full-time job, pay them more money, and with these things, church and state, you're not allowed to touch the money unless you go to an independent arbiter, and then you have to justify if you're trying to get into the campaign, in your inaugural fund or whatever the heck it is here. But this is getting too monotonous. All right, coming up next. Speaking of corruption, the Prococo jury still deadlocked, but the judge keeps having him come back to keep on trying. We're going to look at what that all might mean here and whether or not they could finally be coming closer to the end. Dominic's at the courthouse. He'll join us with more.